Hey, everybody. My name is Arda Ocal. I work at ESPN, and I am a very passionate but continuously learning Star Wars fan.
Excellent. I love it. All right. This is proof right here, guys. If you're watching this, you will not meet nicer people. Whoops, I'm going to point. There and there. You will not meet nicer people.
Coming back to a show that I dearly love and admire. So thanks for having me.
It's like, that's Big Starklighter's homie. So how did you know? Because I'm a nerd.
I've placed information vital to the survival of the rebellion into the memory systems of this R2 unit.
But, I was doing my research, and Wedge was obviously a character that you had to use if you were going to do Rogue Squadrons.
What are you doing, C-3PO? I'm taking one last look at my friends. These aren't your friends.
Cassie and Jim and the teacher, people are like, no. I can literally hear people that are going, no.
It doesn't look like they're even hungry when they get out. They're not just like, did you bring a Snickers or something? There's no logic to it. And then later, we haven't even talked about the Wilford Brimley of it all.
The same thing. Sears never left me again. We're such soulmates that her being older and me being older was exactly where we were meant to be.
Because Darth Vader was the scariest thing that had ever happened to anybody, and this guy literally looks like the devil.
You don't do that. There is no trying.
What's the big question people have? Like, what's the thing everybody's wondering about? What's the thing I don't understand? What would I want to hear?
The galaxy isn't growing to push people out. It's growing to let more people come in and find their love so that it's able to continue and create this connective tissue.
It's good to know that people still love it out there and that the people who made it are all proud and passionate about it and willing to come back.
It was a mess, dude. I had to wear a patch for a bit. We went to see Star Wars that night because I said, no, I'm going. We have to go. And I went to see Star Wars with a huge thing on my eye.
I like to denote people as daddies from time to time. And I believe that you are a certified daddy. Like Pedro Pascal's a daddy. Certified daddy.
I have had the best time ever on Around the Galaxy. Thank you so much.
We are talking to Arda Ocal from ESPN. And Arda, how are you doing?
That was one of the greatest intros ever. That was awesome. Oh my gosh, I have found my home. I have found my people.
That's right.
Awesome.
You belong here with us.
Oh, this is great. They say like surround yourself with people better than you so you can like absorb and learn. Like I do that with the Star Wars community. Like you just put out a roll call of incredible people. Like, by the way, I love the Star Wars video game. So like to see Deborah Wilson there, Fallen Order. I'm about a quarter of the way through on Survivor. I know I'm a little behind there, but like, man, those games are terrific. I am so into them.
And awesome. she's like one of the greatest people in the world. Like we just she's been on actually the show twice just because she just loves talking Star Wars.
I love that.
And
you've got a fellow Toronto resident in Paul Sun-Young Lee himself.
So can I tell you an awesome story? Yep. Can I tell you an awesome story about him? Absolutely. So how I met Paul Sun-Young Lee, terrific dude, massive Blue Jays fan, big baseball guy.
Yes.
I used to be a weather reporter. This was like 10 years ago. And back then, this was before Paul had gotten into the Star Wars universe and even before his show, Kim's Convenience, which started in Canada, blew up, and then got on Netflix. Even before that was a TV show, it was a touring stage show. And that show had come to Vancouver, and I was doing morning weather reporting. And I just reached out to the production and I said, hey, I do this morning thing and I'm telling the weather, but sort of like a morning show. Can I have someone from the cast come? And Paul woke up at like 3 a.m. and stayed with me the entire morning. No complaints, just happy to be there. And like, we just struck up a friendship from there. And like, when I first saw, like, I had no idea that he got cast into Star Wars. I didn't have any of that inside information. And when I saw him on screen, I was like, this was jump out of my seat, like super happy joy for someone, you know? That was like one of the coolest moments for me personally watching Star Wars. I was so thrilled for him.
And that's one of the cool things actually that seems to be happening with Star Wars now is people who are getting involved
just love it. Like they've been, because they've grown up with it, right? It's been around now for so long that the people that are making it, the people that are part of it, the people that are fans have been fans literally their entire life, which is a phenomenal segue for us to ask you, sort of give us maybe some of your earliest memories of Star Wars. How did you get into it? And because you are clearly a huge Star Wars fan, for people who don't know, because we are not, we're a Star Wars podcast, so we're not all of us are sports fans. We are, Nick and I mean, we literally had a bet on the on the
absolutely.
Phillies and Braves, which, by the way, I still got to give you the charity that you got to donate to, Nick. Sorry.
Yeah, I know.
But
how'd that turn out for you, Pete?
Well, it turned out well until until we got to the next round. It's like being a
Only
Flyers fan.
better than for me.
It's like being a Flyers fan. Things always start out great, and then they go straight in the can, my friend.
It was tough.
But all that being said, as an ESPN anchor, people may not be familiar with you, so maybe give us a little bit of your background, and then let's talk a little bit about your Star Wars story and how you got involved, or how you discovered it, and some of your earlier memories.
Yeah, so I grew up in Toronto, grew up loving sports, grew up loving movies, grew up loving pro wrestling, like just anything with a story, right? So that was my childhood. Had a great childhood. Star Wars, I watched I was just like in between the original trilogy, early 80s. So I caught like Return of the Jedi in theaters. But I'll be honest, that was not the height of my Star Wars fandom. I watched the original trilogy. I watched the prequels. But I will completely say that like the height of my Star Wars fandom, where it's at its absolute top, is probably right now. And it jump-started with The Mandalorian. It really did.
Yeah.
Like I was a casual to just above casual. Like I enjoyed being around Star Wars people. I loved going to Comic-Con and seeking out the Star Wars stuff. I was not the guy for a long time, though, that would try to read every book and every comic book and try to consume every single piece of Star Wars content. If there was new shows, if there was new, I would, check out. I wouldn't watch the Clone Wars religiously. I wouldn't watch Rebels religiously. I have since, but like not at the time. But when The Mandalorian came out, something just clicked in my head, and I was like, this is my new favorite thing ever. And I just then went on a whole trail of, a path to consume as much of it as I can. And my fandom grew just month by month by month. I would not call myself, among the elite 1% of people in terms of Star Wars knowledge, but my desire to learn about it is absolutely there. So all those clips that you were showing, like Paul, for example, knowing something ridiculous about a helmet, right? Like, I want to learn more about that, even if I don't know at the moment off the top of my head, right? So like that's where I'm at right now, and I love it. That's why I love doing shows like this, like being around, two guys that know so much about Star Wars and talking about it's the best.
It's so cool to hear you say that, because we generally, as you saw with the guest list at the beginning, we're either talking to people who are creating content, whether it's authors or whatnot, or we do a lot of conversations with social media voices, and these are people who like I always say, like, people are like, oh, you must know a lot of Star Wars trivia. I don't know as much as a lot of people. Like, I don't know the book stuff in depth, etc. But it's so interesting to hear you say that your Star Wars journey exploded with the Disney Plus era, because I feel like that's kind of a rarity, except for people like maybe like my kid who's like 11 years old and gotten into it that way.
Yeah, I listen, I understand that, but at the same time, I just thought it was such a beautifully done story. I'm a big fan of The Mandalorian. I honestly, I thought Andor was fantastic. I thought Ahsoka was really, really well done. Like, I'm really happy if there is a season 2. In fact, if it is greenlit, that like, I can't wait to see those stories. There's so many unanswered questions, especially in the last episode, right? So like, I'm loving the majority of what is coming out of the new series, and yeah, that first season just really jump started everything for me, which then made me go back and consume so much of the of what was already there, even the pre-Disney stuff, even the Legends stuff. Like I have a planet, by the way. Like, Arda is a planet close to Mandalore, which is the greatest thing ever.
Is it real? I didn't see. Okay, see, that's where my level of knowledge is. It's not.
Yeah. Apparently, like, there were 3 Ardas, and they were in Legends. But there's one board game that has been released in the canon era that qualifies as canon, and the Arda planet is mentioned on a map. It's on a map. It's it's very close to Mandalore. And so by virtue of that, me, and I'm going to take full credit for it, obviously.
Sure. Yeah.
I am officially, it's sort of like Stu John. Like, basically, they have me in mind, right?
Yeah, I have.
There you go. They were clearly thinking about you.
Clear, obviously.
Now I'm pissed because I did freelance work for Lucasfilm in the 90s. I've been a fan forever. There's no Planet Fletzer, damn it, and now I'm angry.
See, at some point, I got to find a platform. Maybe it's our podcast at ESPN. Like, we got to bring you on and talk about that. Like, I want to hear those stories. Like, what it was like writing for Star Wars in the 90s. Like the Heir to the Empire era. Like, like all the stories that you're doing. Yeah, we got to talk about that for sure.
Give me a call. I'm there.
Love it. Well, one of the things that put you on our radar was you had the tweet up about if it got a certain amount of likes that you would host Sports Center dressed as Thrawn. Of course, we immediately grabbed onto that. You talked about your love for, this newer era of Star Wars, certainly with Ahsoka. What is it? You mentioned Legends a little bit. You mentioned a little bit about not necessarily having read all the books, all the comics, all the whatever, but what is it that's so compelling about Thrawn? Because I think we all feel that same way. And, there's a good villain, maybe the best villain since, the Emperor. Like, what is it about Ahsoka and maybe even Thrawn especially that kind of grabbed you and has sucked you in?
Thrawn is my favorite character in all of fiction, period. Any show, anything. Let alone Star Wars. All of fiction. I can't get enough of learning about Thrawn. And what I like about Thrawn is that in many ways, he's the opposite of Darth Vader, right? Like, Darth Vader is strong. He uses the Force. He's a powerful entity. He's got a very interesting, good, evil arc. Like, Grand Admiral Thrawn, especially through the Timothy Zahn trilogies, like, he had a very specific purpose, right? Like, he was worried about his people, the Chiss. He was worried about his home planet. And he had very specific plans in place to try and protect his people or ascend through, that whole idea. And actually, not to name drop or hey, look at me. So I was able to do a TED Talk for the first time, like about a month ago. And Grand Admiral Thrawn was a giant part of it. Like 2/3 of the whole talk was about Grand Admiral Thrawn. And basically what I talked about was, it was the best. I was like, of course I'm going to incorporate Star Wars in some way into a freaking TED Talk, right?
Yes.
Like, it'd be amazing.
Give me a platform and watch me go.
That's it. All I wanted was a picture of me on the red carpet with Thrawn behind me, right? That's really what I wanted. So, like, the whole idea was I, in a way, like, this is going to sound weird because it's the villains, but like, I relate to Thrawn in the sense that he rose through the ranks of the Empire as like a non-human, as a Chiss, right? And like, the Empire is not a place that's kind to non-humans, right? Like, it's very difficult to survive in the Empire, let alone like rise to the rank of Grand Admiral and become the heir to the Empire. Like, the whole idea that he had the wherewithal and the tenacity and the stick, like, he had a different like desire and a need to survive in the Empire because he wanted to help his people. But the fact that he found a way to do it, and like, the books go into detail about what he was going through when he was going through the academy, etc. Like, I found all of that to be fascinating and very interesting because, and not to get too deep, I don't want to get too deep on this episode, but like, I went through that coming up in the ranks in broadcasting, right? So I was like, man, this is awesome. And like, and I also am very interested in the Thrawn we saw in Ahsoka. In many ways, like, the motivations seemed a lot different than from the books, right? Like, it seemed like something happened in those 10 years or however long it was since he went into hyperspace with the Purgles and Ezra, that like his motivations are all of a sudden very different. And it's like, I wonder what happened in those 10 years. I hope we get a trilogy book about it, you know?
Yeah. I think we will. And I think it's interesting too, because you always hear in the deep fandom, you end up with these conversations about people saying, "Oh, that wasn't like the character that I knew." But we're like in a spot in Star Wars storytelling where people aren't like, you're not the same person you were 10 years ago. You were not the same person you were 5 years ago, and most of us have changed as a result of COVID. So it really feels like it feels like it's there's a story out there. I agree with you 100% to see where he came from and where where what happened to him, how he changed, and why. And I love what you're saying about having a different motivation. And I think that's what makes him such an interesting character too, is that he's the bad guy, but he's got a different motive. He's got a relatable motivation, whatever that may be, whether it's for his people or for something that he's trying to reach. It makes for super compelling storytelling for sure.
And you got to wonder if that's still the case where we are in the timeline with Ahsoka, right? Like what has happened that maybe that's not the case anymore. Maybe he's like, the Chiss people abandoned me and now I'm on my own and the Empire is all I'm loyal to, or we don't know, right? Like there's still a lot of gaps to fill, which in itself is kind of exciting, right?
Yeah, for sure. And there was something I was going to say about that. Oh yeah, there's the just seeing the chess style of management of or just the way he went about that entire chase and seeing him lose not intentionally, but understanding that if I lose this round 2 is going to be fine because I'm already prepared for it, which is such a cool way to do it.
I always love that about Thrawn. He's like such a compelling character. The way I described him in the TED Talk was he's a bad boy straight out of Mensa. That's how I described him.
Is that TED Talk online somewhere?
Not yet. No,
Okay.
I think it's going to get posted in the next couple weeks or so.
We'll have to definitely be on the lookout for that. You mentioned video games before, and I was reading in your bio on the ESPN site that you are a dual record holder for, but it doesn't say what the record is. Is it the Sega version of NHL? I'm trying to.
Well, Pete and Nick, first of all, thank you for bringing that up. I didn't want to have to bring that up myself. Really appreciate you bringing up the fact that I am, yes, indeed, guilty. I am indeed a video game world record holder. Pause for applause. All right. It was for ridiculous. It was for NHL 95. The one NHL 94 is the big famous one, probably one of the greatest games. Sports games ever. NHL 95, also a great game, the sequel to that. And we set the record for largest gap of victory for two players. So it was me and another guy. So we just basically, you pick the best team, you play against the worst team, and you run up the score as high as you can. And I forget what number, it was like 80-1 or something like that, something ridiculous. And so we submitted it to the authority, the video game authority that keeps records of these things. Yes, it exists. And they were like, yep, this is an official. We had a video. We recorded ourselves almost like a Twitch kind of thing before Twitch. And we were like, yep, this tracks. We're good. And no King of Kong controversies here. Okay. There were no gaps in the videos. There were no VHS like splicing, none of that. Pure straight video. And it was accepted. And it still stands to this day. But I imagine that at some point someone will look at this and be like, "Oh, this seems beatable," and then they'll just demolish it.
I'm waiting for the Netflix documentary of the trials and tribulations of Arda on his way to breaking that record, and how it impacted your career, and you went on to become an NHL analyst and sports desk
at one point.
Lead. That was it.
I love it. Yeah, there's two actually. There's a second one. I think we did with 4 people. We did the 2-person one first. We did that intentionally. And then one day I was at the NHL 94 championships. This is one of the things I did, which was a lot of fun, by the way, hilarious. Like a cottage industry of like 30 something people that just come together on a vacation basically, but they're all really good at this game and they all just compete against each other. And then afterwards, the after party isn't like, let's go out and paint the town red. It's no, let's play more NHL 94. and
doing what we were doing.
Yeah, exactly. Let's just do the exact same thing and have a rematch of the grand final. But also you know what? Let's try and break this record today. And so we did that with 4 people instead of 2. It was just, all right, I guess we got another record now. Woo!
What year was that? Was it like around 95 when it was out, or was it like it sort of retrospective, like going back to the game? I'm sorry, I was a big fan of those Sega games. Like I played
they're amazing.
NHL 94 all the time.
Pete, that'll be our next podcast. We'll do a deep dive of NHL 94
Right.
and like how it got there. NHL. Quick side story. I know NHL 94 had low ratings. Like there were like accuracy 30, intelligence 23. Like there were like really low numbers that since you can't get that low anymore. And the reason was there were a lot of players that got offended and they were like, no, I don't like this at all. Why are you telling me that I have a 23 overall intelligence? Like, what is this nonsense? And so they had to essentially like make a floor for future games.
And they're like, well, Ulf, this is an Arby's.
Right. Excuse me, sir. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Pardon me, Ken.
There's a great, I just found this a couple months ago. There's a great long read article that's all about King Griffey Jr. baseball and the names of all the players, because the only player in that game is King Griffey Jr. Everything else is made up names. And it's this great long read article of the history of that game and where all those made up names came from. And it's that same kind of stuff that you're going, this is our childhood. And now we get to see how it was put together. And it's just fantastic.
Oh, yeah. We did. I have an NBA Jam behind me. And the story of that is incredible. Like these games have I agree with you. These games have like documentary potential in and around themselves. Like it's just incredible what they went through to put these games together. And like the amount of
stories
secrets
behind the
that are
first
in
Mortal
the games.
Kombat.
Oh my gosh, it's incredible. How the characters they chose and like
the whole
Jean-Claude Van Damme thing, the live action capture, like how they had Raiden like walking on a treadmill. Actually, there's a guy, Josh Sway, who created a whole documentary about it. He has like all of this raw footage from that game. He has like WrestleMania, the arcade game. He has NBA Jam, like all this like capture footage. It's fascinating to watch. He just throws them up on YouTube. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah, I found that I ended up wasting, I think it was about an hour and 20 minutes of my life watching a documentary on Prince of Persia, if you remember that old computer game. And I just watched it and I couldn't stop because it was games that I played, so that's wild.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Well, and I want to shift gears just a little bit. We've talked about
talk about Star Wars and not video games.
Yeah, we're going to bring it back to Star Wars just for a quick minute.
Welcome to the
then we'll talk about
that video game
we'll
podcast.
Talk about more important things. That bass guitar in the background. We can go a lot of places.
Oh, let's go.
But so talking about kind of your origins connecting with Star Wars, one of the things that I was interested in, and as I kind of did some research about who Arda was, you are an outspoken and dedicated member of the Islamic faith. And something that I think is very fascinating is George Lucas, when he started and built Star Wars, some of the key components of Star Wars were Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, and the Jewish faith. Like those are all very strict, strongly interwoven throughout the core of Star Wars, its mythology, all that kind of stuff. So my question to you is, as a Muslim, how does Star Wars speak to you? Is there some ways that it connects and informs your faith? Because I find that really fascinating.
You definitely see some bits and pieces, and like you said, you see it in across all of the faiths. Picking, that happens a lot in storytelling, right? Like just the idea of borrowing from different inspirations to create a story. I mean, even Ahsoka, you look at the journey of Ahsoka in the latest season, it's essentially Gandalf the Grey to Gandalf the White, right? Like in a way. Right. So like you definitely see those inspirations. And if certain faiths happen to inform or inspire, then great. Bring it into the story and make it, an interesting part of the story. At the end of the day, we just want cool stories to be told and be entertained, right? So if that's going to make it better, then absolutely. I'm all for it.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I think, for anybody of any kind of faith, what compels us in our faith is the story, the pursuit of that adventure, that journey, that pursuit of something larger. And we see that in Star Wars. We see Luke Skywalker looking for, a life outside of being a moisture farmer. We see, Ahsoka pursuing lost things, whether it's her master. Like you see that continual pursuit, that continual journey. And, for us as normal earthbound human beings, our pursuit of faith mirrors those same things. We're looking for something bigger. And when we get it mirrored, certainly in a story that we connect with, like Star Wars, it brings comfort to go, oh yeah, I recognize a part of who I am in that. And so that's something that always strikes me when I see, my personal faith reflected in Star Wars, or when I hear somebody else talk about it. It just, it just makes it that much more powerful, because it's cool and laser swords, but also it speaks to me on a deeper level. So
And
I love
just
hearing that.
the
I love seeing
redemption,
you, talk about your faith that way.
Of course, the redemption, right? With Anakin, obviously,
Absolutely.
and even just Andor, like the whole like prison sequence, right? Like just
Yes.
the
Oh my
power of that
Mhm.
arc is incredible. Like in Andor, did they even mention the Force once? I don't think so. Like we definitely didn't like see, like it really felt, this is probably the most realistic Star Wars presentation we've ever had.
Yeah,
Right. And like, like I'll say this. People, especially because of the proximity of the release of both series, right? Andor versus Ahsoka. To me, like Andor opened our minds to how Star Wars can be presented in the future, like what different genres or styles we can look forward to. It like Andor still played within the Star Wars sandbox, but in many ways it was pushing the borders, right? In the way that it was presented, it felt very real in a way. Like like a lot of it felt the most realistic we've ever seen in any Star Wars.
Yep.
But then meanwhile, Ahsoka opened our minds to the locations, the types of stories that can be told, right? Like now we have an entire new galaxy to tell stories in. So it's almost like these two series in particular, like just expanded the possibilities to a large degree, which is awesome.
I talk about that a lot, about how probably one of the best things about the Disney acquisition was just the fact that there was so many different doorways for people to enter Star Wars. And you were already there, but you got really sucked in through Mandalorian. My sons, I say it all the time, my people who listen to the show probably are sick of hearing it, but my sons, Luke, Han, and Leia, are Rex, Fives, and Cody from Clone Wars. Like that's his thing. And if you take that, then you also look at, as you just said, I mean, Mandalorian is a different type of storytelling style than Ahsoka, than Andor, than the movies. Solo was, and you could definitely see the comedic elements that went into the original script to that. And so, and I think that's what's kind of cool about Star Wars, and frustrating with the Star Wars fandom is like, if you don't like that one thing, there's another thing for you. It's, you don't have to love all, and that's it. You don't have to love all of it.
I will say this about the Star Wars fandom. I love the passion of Star Wars fans. I used to work at WWE. I was very connected in the pro wrestling bubble. Star Wars fans remind me a lot of pro wrestling fans. And let me describe pro wrestling fans, and then you tell me how close it is to Star Wars fans. And I want to be very clear here. I am not saying this in a negative way at all. Sure. I am just describing them for you in terms of how they consume their favorite product of choice, and also how they dissect their favorite product of choice. Pro wrestling fans love to prognosticate, and they love to be right. So if they're trying to predict what matches will happen at the next WrestleMania, even 7-8 months out, several months out, if they're right, they feel this sense of pride, right? Like, oh, I got this right. And they love to fantasy book, as they call it in pro wrestling. I'm going to fantasy book what's going to happen with this Roman Reigns championship title reign. When will it end? Who is it going to end against? Where will it end? How will it happen? They love to do that kind of forward thinking and predicting. They also have their favorites, and they grew like where they were the biggest fan, whether it was the rock and wrestling era of the 80s, the attitude era of the 90s, what they call the ruthless aggression era of the 2000s, or the current era of WWE or AEW or whatever you consume. Wherever you were your most passionate as a pro wrestling fan, that colors your how you view pro wrestling as it evolves. So as new things become popular in pro wrestling, you it's not that you take offense to it per se, but it's very much a paradigm shift that either you're not ready for or unwilling to take because you have the memories of how you loved pro wrestling at one point in time. And so you always compare it to that.
100%. And that's
100%.
That's absolutely the Star Wars fandom. And I went through that myself with I've been completely transparent with people. When I first saw Phantom Menace, I was lucky that I was at the New York City premiere.
Yeah.
There were celebrities all over. It was a big event. And I walked out of it and I was like, I don't think I like that. And honestly, it took me quite a long time. It took me to the Disney era to sort of see all the connection to become a fan of it. But I think you're right. I think it's because there's just no way you capture that entry point love of it. Same thing with I use music as an example all the time. Like, you know, I was a huge Metallica fan in the 80s and the 90s, and I haven't loved the stuff too much since, but you know what? I love that there's other fans. I love that my kids are into newer Metallica and I'm not, but at least we're both into Metallica. So it's a cool
Pete, can I tell you that there was a story like a couple months ago that Metallica did a weekend, I believe it was SoFi Stadium, maybe SoFi, one of the stadiums in California. And they, in their weekend residency that weekend, outdrew or grossed Taylor Swift. And I have never been more proud in that moment. It was like the greatest thing ever. I was like, yeah, score one for the dads. Let's go.
We got one.
We did it. Way to go, James. Way to go, Lars. Yeah. They're just so happy.
What we were talking
the Swifties are like, what's wrong with you? What is the matter with you?
Just give me a moment.
Yeah. Go back to covering Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce on SportsCenter, okay, bud?
Oh man, it's my daughter had never heard of the Kansas City Chiefs, obviously, until a couple weeks ago. And now, yeah, it's wild. We touched on music, and Nick mentioned it also. I see a bass behind you. Nick and I happen to be bass players. I have had multiple people who play bass on the show. We have like Nick from Bayside. We have Adam from Story of the Year. We've had actors who it turns out, oh yeah, I play bass. You play bass. I'm guessing, unless you've just collected
Star Wars and bass players.
But
amazing.
How long have you played bass? Give us a little bit of your bass story.
It was definitely a middle school, high school, college. That was my era of bass. Like I just picked it up honestly just to see if I want to replay it. Maybe I'm keeping it for my kids honestly, but like the last thing I played on it was the NHL and ESPN theme song just for a social thing. But like I loved it. Yeah, I was a big fan of Flea. Like I always loved the bands that had a predominant bass player that didn't just follow the chords of the guitar, right? Like you can relate to that, right? Nick and Pete, like
absolutely.
Flea, Peanut from 311 was really good. Les Claypool, Primus, like when they were prominent, it was noticeable, right? One of the first riffs actually that hooked me really good was oh my god, what was that song by Space Hog? Oh my god.
In the meantime,
the first like do 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 do, and I was like, this sounds so cool. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Gee, what else do we have in common, guys? Like, I go down the list. It's like anything else.
It is funny though. There's like this weird bass player connection, and bass player, and of course, as you saw in the opener, we had Charlie Benante from Anthrax on, and there's just something. I think there's this weird sort of. If something about Star Wars catches you, you probably also have some sort of, not probably, you might have a musical connection, and I don't know what it is. I tried to get at it with Charlie, and he didn't know. I've spoken to Nick and Adam about it. I don't, but there's something about it. And there's something about bass players in Star Wars though that's really, I don't understand what that connection is.
It sounds like goaltenders and being great hockey analysts on television. Like goaltenders just do it really well for some reason. Maybe bass players, or if you ever played a bass in your life, you're gonna love Star Wars.
Yeah, maybe there's something about I don't know what it is.
The Venn diagram is large.
I'm like, I feel like, and every time I talk about it, I'm like, I'm really just trying to force something here. Maybe I just don't know what the problem is.
No, but at this point, we're like,
another one for us, right?
Yeah, at this point, we're like 12 or 14 people deep that we've interviewed on this show that are all bass players and Star Wars fans. So there's something there. The statistics are proving out at this point.
We're gonna have like an all weekend bass player Star Wars marathon or something. I don't know what that's going to look like.
I'm in.
But-
I'm in.
All right.
I love it.
Well, we talked a little bit about we a big hockey fan here, but one of the things we want to throw a concept at you, and it's something a little bit different. Not all of our listeners are big sports fans, but as I said, we are. We want to throw a couple sports at you and get your perspective as a Star Wars fan. Which Star Wars character is going to be like the biggest fan of that sport? Like, for example, let me start by throwing like baseball. Which Star Wars character is like the big baseball nerd? Because to me, baseball is like the nerd sport, and I love that. But
the biggest baseball fan in the Star Wars galaxy.
Yeah.
It's not Han. It would be too boring for Han.
Right.
It would be way too boring for Han. I feel like Hu Yang might like it because baseball is very very analytical. It can be very analytical, and it's like a collection of information and the type of equipment and like the details, the nuances. And Hu Yang knows like every lightsaber ever, right? So like
the history of baseball.
Yeah, and baseball has like such a rich history that it's almost as if there would be a droid that would be created at the very beginning of baseball that would just collect all the information. So Hu Yang would be a good choice. I wonder if. Yeah, I'm going to simmer on baseball for a second. I would go with Hu Yang for now.
Okay.
I like that.
That's a good one. Nick, you got one? You got a sport to throw at him?
Well, you jumped in right off the bat and you said it's not Han, and I kind of agree with you. Han's not a baseball guy.
He's probably a football guy.
Who's going to be the Star Wars? I was going to say he needs something faster pace. So football, basketball, either one would work for Han Solo. So I'm going to go with basketball. Who's the person in the Star Wars galaxy that's a huge NBA fan? They want that fast pace. They want that drama. They want it to be really good in the playoffs. The regular season, they're working their way through it. Who's your Star Wars NBA fan?
Yeah, Star Wars NBA fan. I feel like Ezra might be a sneaky NBA fan. I feel like Ezra would love he's just like because he's so he's got that jokiness to him a little bit, and like NBA personalities. I think that he would find that funny. I feel like an NBA player would throw in a "I'm Jabba the Hutt" reference just like as a nod to Ezra, So I feel like that might be a good one. Sabine might be. Actually, I could see Sabine and Ezra going to NBA games. I could see them at Celebrity Row, and they're there, and Ezra stands up, and well, I guess it's Sabine's now, but Sabine will just have the lightsaber in the air as ha ha ha, look at this, hey, cool, and then throw it back in the holster kind of thing.
Totally.
Yeah. I think those two would be a good choice.
That's a good one. They throw the kiss cam at him, and there's that awkward moment where we're waiting.
We're waiting.
Is it gonna happen? I don't know.
And then Chopper comes in right between them and ruins the moment. Oh, Chopper.
Yeah.
and then it cuts away.
Stadium.
And then it just cuts away.
Love it.
Just as long as it's not Luke and Leia on the kiss cam.
Yeah. We've gone through this before. You can't do that.
Yeah, too soon, guys. Hashtag too soon.
So I was going to throw football at you, but I think you're right. I think Han's probably a football guy.
100% Han Solo, because he would want the most popular sport, right? He would want he probably loves the action. He's probably the guy that's hosting the party,
He's also betting heavily on football.
He's probably he's probably into that world. He just screams, "I love the NFL," and he's probably the guy that one of the big celebrity, he might do the celebrity coin toss at a game or something like that. I could see Han being that guy for sure. And Chewbacca's just there because his buddy's there, and Chewbacca's not really understanding anything, and he's just just happy to be there. Although we all make the jokes about how Chewbacca should be on the defensive line, and he would make a great goalie though. I think Chewbacca would just throw him in net in hockey. He'd be great.
Well, in the modern hockey era with the 6'4" goalies, he's the guy, right? He's the guy. Yeah, we had Joe Barksdale on, who he played for the Chargers for a couple seasons, and we did the football positions with him. That was a lot of fun. Well, why don't we'll throw just one more at you, and then we'll get to our 10 question segment. But who's the biggest hockey fan?
Yeah, who's the biggest hockey fan? That's a really good one. Luke could be a hockey fan. I could see Luke as a hockey fan. I don't know if he's the biggest hockey fan, but I could see him as a hockey fan. I think he would respect the team nature of it. I think that he would enjoy the action. Yeah, I think Luke is a good one. I feel like, though, some of the villains would love hockey, though. I wonder if like Darth Vader would like hockey. I feel like he would appreciate elements of hockey.
Yeah,
you know, like just the rough and tumble nature
all the gear.
Of it. Yeah,
I just you said villain. I think I would say, and I haven't thought about this at all. I just put the questions together. I don't think of answers, but I would think maybe like Darth Maul might be like, just because of the intensity.
Yes.
And the I mean,
yes. Actually, let me go back to football for a second.
Okay.
Thrawn would love football.
Oh my God.
Because football is like the most tactical sport, and it's like stop and start, stop and start. I think Thrawn would love how he could like manipulate every play in the game, and every time it's an opportunity to outsmart the opponents. I think he would be all over that.
Right. Yeah.
Thrawn would give up a full set of downs to figure out what your defense is doing to turn around and smoke you the next time.
4 and out. We lost the day, but we have not lost the war just
we're
yet.
Not done here.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
That holding penalty was completely worth it.
And I think if I can throw in my 2 cents on hockey, I'm going to go with Zeb for hockey, because there's a lot of punching in hockey. And Zeb loves nothing but a good, punch somebody with a helmet on.
Yeah.
He'd be in for the brawling aspect of hockey.
I love that. I think 000 would be a big combat sports fan. I think 000 would be like watching championship boxing fights and UFC, like front row cage side.
100%.
In his in their retirement, when they're questioning their existence because they're not out there murdering people or doing contract killing or whatever they're doing. They're like, what is the meaning of life? They're there watching UFC fights. They love it.
We got Black Chrysanthemum in Boba Fett, Book of Boba Fett. We got to get 000. And what's the R2 unit guy's name? I can't remember his name. We got to get those two murder droids in live action at some point. It'd be great. And I think the Stormtrooper on your shirt would probably be playing for the San Jose Sharks.
Probably at this point, he would be getting a big contract with the San Jose Sharks right now.
That's the only thing keeping me going this week is the fact that the Flyers play the Sharks this week. So there's a chance that we're not going to completely shit the bed this week.
Incredible. Hey, the Flyers have had a great start, by the way.
Much better than anybody expected. I said I tweeted out at one point that when I watched the Flyers opener, it was like going back to watch your high school football team. You know the uniforms, but you don't know any of the names. And I think I'm hopeful that it's gonna. Hopefully, the Flyers will give this team time to grow and get together, because man, we've traded away. And by the way, hockey, I don't know what's about hockey. It's the only sport where I refer to it as we, even though I don't play for the Flyers. But I feel like we just have a history of putting teams together and then trading guys just as they're about to be great in Los Angeles or someplace else. So
I love it. I love it.
But we have our 10 question segment of the show, where we ask you 10 questions, sort of inside the Actors Studio style. There's no wrong answers. We won't judge you. The internet might, but we won't. So I'll turn it over to Nick to give you our first question of our top
Absolutely.
10.
Our first question of the 10 questions is, what is your favorite Star Wars movie, TV show, or book? You can answer all three. You can only answer one. Totally up to you, but favorite Star Wars movie, TV show, or book?
The Thrawn trilogy, the one after the Chiss Ascendancy stuff, the Timothy Zahn, the one that's in canon, the one where that trilogy is definitely my favorite. I absolutely loved it, but I'm coming at it from a complete Thrawn bias.
Yeah.
So my favorite live action would probably be Rebels or Ahsoka, because Thrawn is involved. But I see like really close. I'm telling you, is the whole Andor into Rogue One. Like, I just love that time frame is being explored in depth, and the way that they're presenting it. So I apologize to everyone that is a 1.0 Star Wars fan to the point where the original trilogy is their favorite thing in the entire universe. I don't, good on you, but that's my answer.
But I think it's funny you talk about Andor, and Star Wars has done something over the last 10 years, I guess, since the Disney acquisition, is they've announced projects, and as deep a fan as I am, I've been like, I don't know if I need that. And then it always blows me away. Andor was one of those. Rogue One was one of those. I was like, well, okay, it's the opening crawl. And then I loved Rogue One. And then Andor, I was like, yeah. And then, wow. Just the way this show was put together, as you said, it was just a different way to tell Star Wars stories, which was so cool. So cool.
It made you want spin-off shows of all the other characters. You know what I mean?
Without
Like
question.
that's how great it was.
Give me a Luthen Rail show.
Exactly. Give me a Luthen show. Oh, it's so good.
I want an entire Mon Mothma written by Aaron Sorkin in the style of West Wing. Like, give me every bit of that.
I want a Kino Loy show. That's how much I loved it. I was like, I want to. He can't swim. Yeah. What? He can't swim. He can't swim. People.
Why can't he swim?
Anyway,
that was hard. And now that you're saying it, I'm thinking about it. Heartbreaking. The guy. Oh, anyway, yeah. Second question is, what is your favorite non-Star Wars movie? I know your daughter's is Encanto, but what is your favorite non-Star Wars movie?
Is. It was Usual Suspects for a very long time. I love that movie. I'm a big fan of when there are giant twists and unexpected ones. Sixth Sense is like that too. Usual Suspects for sure. I'm just a big TV junkie, man. Like I'm in a big morally corrupt superhero kick. So I'm loving all of the stuff that's out right now, like Invincible and Doom Patrol and Homeland,
The Boys.
Outstanding. I would say, like, you know what I really loved? I loved the first 4 seasons of Dexter, like culminating with the John Lithgow season. That was some of the best stuff. Oh, it was so good. Yeah. Then the rest of the series occurred.
Have you watched it since it returned? I haven't watched it.
Yeah, I did. It was fun. It was good. Yeah. I actually I'm more at peace after watching the reboot that they did recently.
Yeah.
With the entire series as a whole, I still have a special place in my heart for seasons 1 to 4. I thought it was very well done, magnificent. But yeah, Better Call Saul, Breaking Bad, awesome. That's on the list too. Better Call Saul was outstanding.
For sure. Yep.
Absolutely. That's awesome. All right. Our third question. What is your favorite Star Wars collectible that you own?
I actually have a couple. So I love finding sports Star Wars crossovers, mashups, whether it's like bobbleheads, etc. I want to show you one. I actually was looking for a place to show this. So this, hockey fans, I'm sorry, Philadelphia Flyers fans here, because this has to do with the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Pennsylvania rival. So this is a jersey. Yeah, this is exactly. So this jersey here, I don't know if you can see it perfectly, but this is an example of one Star Wars crossover jersey. It's actually, this is the logo of the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins, the AHL affiliate of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Why this jersey is actually special, though, aside from all other crossover jerseys, which are all great, this particular jersey is actually designed by Dave Filoni himself. So every year, the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins have a Star Wars night that Dave Filoni's actually has been involved in previous years, because he's such a giant Penguins fan. He gets involved and designs these jerseys. Every year it's a different design. This year, I think this was like 2017. One of the previous years was Mandalorian inspired. And so I love that we have a world where there is an a hockey team affiliated in an NHL organization that has a yearly Star Wars night that has one of the heads of Star Wars involved in it. Brilliant. Because he's such a giant hockey fan. I absolutely love that.
It's got to be the Penguins, though. Does it have to be the Penguins,
Sorry,
Dave?
dude.
Does it have to be the Penguins? I know.
Hey, maybe you'll get a Star Wars Gritty crossover. Maybe Gritty will be a character like on Kashyyyk. Maybe Gritty will be like the like a random offshoot of Wookiee or something.
I don't know how Gritty survived the first year in Philly, and now is like he's an international superstar.
Now he's entrenched. You're not getting rid of Gritty.
It's insane. All right. Next question. What is your favorite Star Wars sound effect?
Lightsaber opening, probably. That's probably the one that comes to mind. That's probably the basic question, the answer, though. Yeah, off the top of my head.
Yeah,
I'd have to think about that. Blaster shot's pretty cool.
Yep. Yeah, there's just
the noise coming out of the Sarlacc pit's kind of funny.
Yes.
I'm trying to think now of other noises that I find that I love. I'll have to come back if I think of any, even if we're 3 questions ahead. I'll be like, and I also love this. This is also cool.
Totally fair.
The amazing thing, the reason we put that question in there is because it's really wild to me that there are sounds that if Star Wars didn't exist, they would just make no sense. Like the sound of the lightsaber, the sound of the TIE fighter squealing is like, just.
But the sound of the Force, like the push, like that wouldn't exist either.
It just works too. I mean, it's just brilliant. Yep.
One of my favorites is certainly the Wilhelm scream, which is not a Star Wars sound per se, but it's been used, all these years in Star Wars. And my kids learn to recognize it to where when they're watching other movies, they're like, "Dad, they did the Star Wars scream," and I'm like, "Yeah, they did."
That's awesome.
It clicked. So sounds are a key part of it. Our next question is, who is your favorite Star Wars droid? There are plenty to choose from, but who's your favorite Star Wars droid?
Yeah, my favorite. We actually did a droid draft on our Star Wars podcast, the ESPN podcast that we did. I had the first overall pick, so I picked R2 with the first overall. Really, if you're gonna do a droid draft, like R2 and C-3PO are 1A and 1B, right? Like you're essentially picking which one is the better one. And there were no parameters, by the way. It was just like we're just picking droids. It's not like, who are the best fighters, who are the best, etc. No, it's everything. And I'm like, well, they're clearly the biggest draws, the most popular ones ever. So like, it has to be R2 as a first overall pick. I love, actually, my favorite droid is BD1. I think BD1 is underrated. I think that for the size of BD1, this like tiny minuscule droid, it's one of the most important elements of the Jedi Fallen Order, Jedi Survivor games.
Yep.
And super crafty. It's your Swiss Army knife.
Yep.
And it's cool. BD1.
Okay.
I need to get a BD1.
So I'm going to do it this way. I'll throw this at you. Sorry, Pete. I'll throw this at you. You've given us R2. You've given us BD1. We're getting Arda's Star Wars droid Mount Rushmore. Who are the other two?
The Mount Rushmore. Hu Yang would be on there.
Nice.
Okay.
And who else? Oh, L3. L3
Nice.
got the map to the galaxy.
choice.
Oh yeah, so this is how I would describe it. Okay, R2 is the main event. R2 is my Stone Cold Steve Austin. R2 is my like big draw. Okay, if I want to bring people in the house to if I'm gonna have a traveling circus of droids for a show, R2 is my main. I'm putting R2 squarely on the poster. People are gonna see R2 and they're gonna buy tickets even if they're at a premium price, right? Okay, so then you have L3 who has the entire galaxy in her like knowledge, right? Like L3 is the reason that Han Solo could do the Kessel Run in what was it, 12?
Yep,
11.
less than 12 parsecs.
Less than 12 parsecs, yeah. So like that's the reason why, is because L3 was in the mainframe. So like L3 has that knowledge. Then you have Hu Yang, who has knowledge of all this lightsabers. And also, if you're the oldest droid and you're, was it around 75% intact from tens of thousands of years? That's pretty impressive, okay? Like now you're asking questions how that occurred. But more so, you're just impressed that it occurred. So I'm picking that. And then BD1 is your all multi-purpose, I fill in every gap necessary. I would say that Mount Rushmore is a formidable team, especially as a team. So I'm big fan.
I dig it. Amazing.
Love that.
And I just need humor. Like I don't have that much. I need more like R2 is funny, but like R2's funny with C-3PO, you know, like R2 needs a comedic, an Abbott to Costello.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why for me, I would have to have K2SO on there. K2SO was.
Yeah.
But
the curmudgeon.
Yeah. Maybe that's just me coming out. I don't know. So next question is, which Star Wars character would you most like to be and why? If you could
Who I would most
life.
Oh, well, Thrawn, obviously.
Yeah, right.
That's the obvious answer. I want to be super smart. I want to be the greatest military tactician to ever live. I want to rise the ranks of an impossible organization and be super successful. I want to be the heir apparent to this organization. I want to know that Darth Vader was Anakin and make sly jokes about it and annoy the heck out of him at different points of their missions together.
Yep.
Thrawn is the best.
Yeah.
So that's my easy answer.
Plus
It's not Thrawn though.
Excellent.
Like I guess. Sorry. Plus what?
No, I was gonna say. Plus, you pulled off the blue skin, red eyes somehow. I don't know how you did that. That was good.
Yeah. Yeah. That took a while, but we got there.
All right. So this one's a little tricky, but I think you can do it. Certainly, we live in a world of social media. We live in a world of no shortage of opinions. What is your unpopular Star Wars opinion? What's the Star Wars opinion you have that most of the people are like, really? That's the thing you think?
That you don't have to be a lifelong fan and consume every single piece of Star Wars comic book, anything, watch every single panel at Comic-Con and know every single thing about everything in order to be a Star Wars fan. Like
Brilliant.
I have to think of a more like niche, nuanced point for you, but like off the top of my
that's
head,
good.
That's the one. Like we all love Star Wars in different ways, and I respect people that know Star Wars inside and out and know every single detail about every single thing. But that doesn't. If you don't know that doesn't mean you can't have your opinions about it and like what you like and like what you or not like what you don't like. Just we can all respect our different levels of fandom. Exactly. And everyone is welcome, and like we love Star Wars at the end of the day. So let's enjoy it.
I'm gonna edit in applause when I do the podcast version. That's just like a big standing ovation. That's perfect.
You nailed it.
That's perfect. If you could own any Star Wars spaceship or vehicle, now I'm going to take the Falcon off the table because everybody says the Millennium Falcon, so I'm going to take it off the table. But if you could own any spaceship or vehicle from the Star Wars universe, which one would it be?
A spaceship or vehicle from the Star Wars universe, the Death Star.
Nobody has ever said
an intact Death Star. I would like an intact Death Star, and I would like it to be visible from Earth. I would like it to be right beside the moon, and this is before it got blown up. Okay, I want an intact Death Star, and I want to be able to go there. So, like now, we have to find the right tech to be able to go to space, so that I can visit the Death Star and take my friends there and be able to see outside the window so we could see space and hey, there's the moon and there's Earth. How cool would I be, people? How cool would I be if I could do that for my friends and family? We, the three of us, could do a podcast from there.
From the
100%.
Death Star. Live from the Death Star.
100%.
Arda, Pete, and Nick. There it is.
I'm gonna request we solve any thermal exhaust port problems before we go, though.
No problem. There was an astronaut, Chris Hadfield, who was at the International Space Station, and he dropped the puck on an NHL game from the International Space Station, like it was floating, right, zero gravity, and he just like went, and then just dropped the puck like that, and then it just came down from the ceiling. It was like the coolest thing. I'm like, imagine what we could do in the Death Star. Amazing.
I have to say I've done the show since 2019. Nick and I have been doing it for about 2 years together now. Nobody has ever said the Death Star was, and that's a win.
That begs the question, why not?
Right.
Exactly.
I am now going
What's wrong with these people?
I have to think about what is wrong with everybody else who came before.
And by the way, I'm not going to use it for evil. I just want that much space, and I want that giant. Like, if you have the plans, hey, no problem. I mean, you can come in. The door's open. Like, we're not gonna fight you. Like, sure, you have the plans. Actually,
like
maybe
when
you
you
can tell me where to
create
put an extra bathroom.
It's like when you create your character in Madden and you just go ahead and crank everything up to 100. Like, let's just start at the top. What are we waiting on?
Exactly. You said anything.
I dig it. That's amazing.
Were
That's
you
right.
expecting?
You didn't,
Was
you
I
didn't take
supposed to
the
say a
Death
TIE
Star off the
fighter
table,
or TIE
Pete, just the
defender
Falcon.
or
No,
Yeah,
everybody
like-
always says the Falcon, so I took that off, and then people are like, I don't know. I just the closest to it was. Did you play Star Wars Battlefront?
Yeah.
Okay, so or Battlefront 2. One of my favorite interviews ever was a guy named Dan. I can't think of his name. He's gonna kill me.
Donahue.
Dan Donahue. Thank you. Dan was the voice of Shriv in that game.
Okay.
And
Awesome.
and he said Star Destroyer. And much like you, he was like, not to, I don't want it for evil. I just like having a lot of space. There's a lot of room in there.
Yeah.
So
I'd love to see it. See, love to see it.
Yeah. All right. So question number 9. What is your favorite Star Wars moment? Whether it's in a movie, a moment that you've experienced personally, what is your favorite Star Wars moment?
I have 3 off the top of my head. Thrawn's arrival, episode 6. I thought, again, I'm biased. Okay. I for the longest time for me, the creation of Darth Vader was my favorite moment in Star Wars. From Revenge of the Sith. I thought that was like the coolest moment, right? Where you see him coming up, like, and that's like the moment that you see Darth Vader really for the first time. I thought that was super cool. But Thrawn's arrival, the music, the organ, the hint of the Thrawn theme song, all the night troopers that are in rows, the Great Mothers waiting, and Balin and Shin are there, and Morgan, like it's just like him walking, and how long it took too. It was like a WrestleMania entrance. It was like, man, boy, he's taking his sweet time here. And then you see Captain Enoch too. It's like you have all this stuff is going on. It's like, that's amazing. So that I would say for sure. I will say from a like, oh, this is awesome for Star Wars fans, and especially for him perspective, the Keller and Beck moment when the doors open and he essentially saves Grogu from Order 66. Like the fact that Ahmed Best gets that moment after everything that he went through, everything people said about Jar Jar and like how he had to internalize that for like decades, but then he gets to be this character, which by the way was a character he played on like a Disney Junior game show. Like just the continuity there, but also like just that he gets this redemption arc in the Star Wars universe. Knowing that story, I thought that is so cool. And I just love when those kind of things happen. So I also love, like, obviously you can't see them, but like if you know in a scene there's like a celebrity in a stormtrooper outfit or like something like that. I always love knowing that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, that's great. Cool. Well, the last question on this top 10 list is, what is your go-to Star Wars quote?
My go-to Star Wars quote, probably the obvious one, right? May the Force be with you. I like hello there, ironically. Like I'll say that to like Star Wars fans every now and then. I'll do the obvious, like just Yoda isms, but not like actual Yoda things that Yoda has said, just like the sentence structure of Yoda. It's a trap is always a good one. Yeah, the famous beats. Probably. I am no Jedi. I've been saying that a lot lately. I try to incorporate as many of them as possible on highlights when I'm doing Sports Center. I just try to throw them in. Like I shoehorn as many as I can as possible. I really do. It's just ridiculous.
That's awesome.
That is great. Well, Arda, you've given us an hour of your time. I really appreciate it. This has been so much fun talking Star Wars with you. Where can people follow you, and where are they going to see you on ESPN?
You on X at Arda, Instagram Arda Ocal. Just follow me there. Honestly, the more Star Wars fans I can be friends with, the better. So I always am welcoming and happy whenever I get new follows from people who love Star Wars. And you just, if you're a hockey fan, you'll see me on the NHL and ESPN coverage. Thursday we have a doubleheader on ESPN Plus. So you see me on the desk between intermissions. And then we have a Star Wars podcast, Never Tell Me the Odds, that comes up every now and then. The feed is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. It's me and 2 other guys, Ryan McGee, Clinton Yates, who are also really great people at ESPN. We're like 3 different corners of ESPN. Like one is entrenched in college football, the other one is entrenched in Major League Baseball, and I'm entrenched in hockey. And we all come together to nerd out about Star Wars, which is the coolest thing ever. So, I appreciate the time, guys. Like, let's definitely do this again. This was a lot of fun. Really cool to nerd it up with you guys.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you again soon.
See you guys.
I'm going to just hit the end thing here, and then we're cool. We're good.